Hi there. Um, all of us who swim uh, have to use a lot of energy if we do not float well. So if we start by putting a float between our legs, to get the legs to float up, it somehow makes it easier to swim, say freestyle or even backstroke. But what happens if you somehow can bring your legs up, maybe without the float, and you are floating somehow, maybe the star position, star float, maybe pencil float, hands together, legs together, feet together, maybe barrel float, face down, but you can also do a barrel float face up if you're really good. But anyway, most people when they float, or even, hang on, before we go to floating in the way where we can swim, that there's one default position where if you cannot float, somehow you cannot float, but you can put air into your lungs. You can somehow fill a whole lung full of air, and you are somewhere in the deep pool, deep end of the swimming pool, something like 7 feet of water, 6 feet of water, taller than you, of course. I mean, deeper than your height, and you fill your lungs with air fully, and then somehow your legs sink as usual, they sink right to the bottom, they go down, boom. And when your legs go down, of course, most people will start to tread water, or they will start to say, hey, I got to start swimming, or I'm going to go hit the bottom of the pool. If you just do nothing, you just don't release the air from your lungs, just stay still for a while, you'll find that you'll start pivoting downwards. Your legs will go downwards, but something in your upper body will pop out of the water. It's not going to pop up that high, it's going to pop up somewhere here maybe, and you're not going to be able to breathe. You can't take in air like this because you get water into the nose. So what you got to do is stay there. You're now floating vertically. Everybody can float vertically. It's very easy. I mean, you just fill the lungs with air, and there you are. I mean, if you are not really very buoyant, you have a lot of muscle mass, and you have heavy bones, not so much fat, and you float like this. Water is here, water line is here, and this part is still going to be exposed. You're still gonna have a little bit of you sticking out of the water. Somehow it's either here or here or here. And some people are very good, they're up here, I don't know, carrying a plastic bag down there. But anyway, main point is everybody can float vertically, at least. And if you're floating vertically, it's not too difficult if you're flexible enough. The neck, your chest is flexible enough. You can always arch up like this. The moment you arch up, stretch out your hands like this, like a T-shaped kind of thing, and you can get air. You can get oxygen. You can survive floating vertically. Let go some air, you might sink a bit, but then you quickly bring in more air, and then you're able to then start a breathing cycle that is sustainable. You will be able to stay there, floating vertically. So if nobody is panicking and everybody is fine, and no huge waves are coming and breaking over your face, like in the sea. In the sea is okay if it's not too rough. You just go up and down with the waves, But if there's white water and waves are breaking, there are white caps over your face, then it's not so comfortable. You don't go floating around in that kind of water, in that kind of conditions. So in those conditions, so what you do is You choose somewhere where the water is flat, you know, like in a pond, in a lake, in a pool that is deep enough, and you do your vertical float. No problems. You can breathe. You can survive. You can easily survive. Now, but that's not good enough because you're not going to be able to move really well, you know, in water if you have the whole, the whole surface area of your body creating that kind of drag, you know, resistance against forward movement. You know, you're gonna like moving a piece of plywood, you know, or a piece of I don't know, heavy piece of thing and trying to drag it through water. You know, it's like dragging a parachute through water. You know, it's not going to work. So you don't want to float like that if you want to move. See, so everybody tries to float with a pencil float or with a star float. A barrel float is no good because you're curled up in a ball. You know, you can move like that. You know, if you really want to. You can do a pedal, you know, while your legs are tucked into your chest. You can pedal, you know, not a problem. You can easily pedal, but it's not so elegant. Yeah, you want to be more streamlined than that. So you want to really want to swim, you know, with stretch out body somehow, you know, and you're not going to get to go very fast, you know, if you're not swimming freestyle or backstroke, one of the fastest strokes, you know, like a butterfly. So even breaststroke is fast compared to what I'm going to tell you about. You know, so if you're going to float, and you can float somehow, you know, with your legs stretched out and you're out there, you know, lying supported by water horizontally, no problems. Most people, when they are in that kind of floating position, they freeze up. You know, the whole body becomes tense because the body is not used to it. It's not used to trying to, you know, regulate how high above the water line your face is gonna be. You know, before water goes into the nose. You know, it's not comfortable. Most people have an aversion. You know, if water gets into the nose, it doesn't feel comfortable, and they try their best. You know, I'm gonna stick my head out of the water as much as possible, and that destroys your balance. You know, so you got to bring yourself really low. You know, just enough to get some air. Even if your nose is down there, it doesn't matter. If your mouth is up there, you can still breathe through the mouth. You know, just still head up a bit and your mouth is up. You gain 1 or 2 more centimeters of buffer between water and your air pathways. You know, where air gets into your lungs. So if you can do that, keep yourself low in the water, you know, and somehow the other part of your body, which is legs and whatever, they somehow you will come up a little bit higher, you know, and if you can arch your back a bit, you get even higher, you know. The arch is very important. I mean, if you don't arch the back, look up, and the chest, you know, arch it like this, you're not going to float. The default position, if you are with a concave, you know, chest, is the vertical float. So if your chest is very tight, all the muscles here are very tight, the lats are tight, everything is pulling you like this, you know, hunched like this, you're not going to be able to float. You're going to like go up there and then boom, the legs go down, because the default position for a concave posture is like this. See, concave, you know, concave. Let me see, like that. If you're like that, you're just going to go down like this. See? And those is your legs. Okay, so you got to be somehow able to get a convex, you know, a convex curve on your chest. Then somehow your legs gonna dangle a bit lower a bit, you know, in your head, looking up, and that pulls everything up, you know, somehow. Yeah, and when you can do that, okay, great. Most people can do that, you know. Kids can do it. Women can very easily because they tend to have more fat around the hips and the thighs, so yeah, more buoyancy, so it's easier for them. And if you're a guy like me, you know, and not exactly fat, you know, you're not fat, legs gonna sink. The legs are going to sink like rocks, you know, just like stone, just going down. So the question is how do you stop those legs from sinking? You know, how are you gonna stop it? And you got to realize that if you're going to float, there are two force vectors involved. One is the buoyancy from your lungs, mainly from the air in the lungs, a little bit from fat all over the body. Fat floats on water. You must know that this force vector, you know, is buoyancy. You know, it's going up, pushing you up. Mainly centered around the chest area. You could bring it a bit lower if you can extend your belly a bit, you know, fill it with air, you know, like those guys who play the saxophone, or you know, good singers, they can fill their belly with air, you know, they can sustain, you know, air coming out. You get deep lungs, you know, the lungs go down, you know, all the way down. The diaphragm goes, is relaxed, and it just drops down and allows the lungs to distend like plastic bags down lower to the belly. Now when that goes down, that's really good for anybody who wants to float, you know, because then the center of action, or the force vector where this force vector is acting, is now going lower, you know, lower down. And it's so important because the other force vector that causes your legs to sink or your body to sink, but basically legs, legs are heavy, you know, thigh bones, very heavy bones. That force vector is acting not around here, but somewhere at the solar plexus or even a bit lower, you know, nearer to your hips. And that force vector is going down. Buoyancy is going up. Now, if there's a gap between the two, this gap causes a turning moment. And this turning moment, one going down, one going up, it's going to just rotate your body where your legs go down, and then you go down, you know. I mean, you get into the vertical float position if you want to float, yeah, but most people will just try to swim. And what happens then is that if we want to stop this rotation of the body, you know, where the legs go down, and where there's this offset between the force vector that goes down, that's your center of gravity in water, and the buoyancy vector, force vector that's pushing you up, you know, support from water, lifting you up somehow. You got to close this gap, you know, you got to bring these two until they coincide, until they are overlapping, you know, one up, one down. Then you are in a state of static balance. You would be statically in a state of balance on water. And that is really good, no? Because that means you're floating, you know. You can do that, you can achieve that, you're floating. So you got to bring this two together. So how can you do that? Just now we said, you could fill the lungs with really more air, and then somehow, you know, deep down belly, you know, and then it brings the force vector down. That if you can do that, that's perfect. You know, you immediately you float well, no problems about that. But there's one more thing you can also do, you know, if you're not that relaxed, diaphragm is not too relaxed, you're not too if you are quite stiff, you know, then what you can do is you could use ballast, you could use counterweights, and the counterweight is actually your head, you know, and also your hands. What you do is if your back muscles, your lats are not too tight and your chest is not too tight, if you can bring you know, your hands really down like this, you know, then you can do that. Then you assume the pencil float position, and somehow your elbows will stick out of the water, and maybe even your hands could stick out a little bit, and anything that sticks out of the water at the top end of the body, where the head is the head, this is the head, and anything above that sticks out of the water, it is acting like a counterweight. And anything that is in surrounded by air, you know, is already out of the surface of the water, it's going to give you amazing in effect, you know, a huge effect, because the rest of the body is underwater, right? When it's underwater, it means its density is almost the same as water, maybe a little bit less, you're floating, okay, but it's just at the surface of the water, it's not sinking right to the bottom like a rock, you know, you haven't released the air from the lungs. So that means you will have a huge difference in the relative density of your hand or your elbow or your head that is out of water at the upper part of the body, sticking out of the water in the medium of air, that has a great effect to bring to bring balance. Where if legs are going to go down, something up there is pushing down, because it is lifted out of the water. It's going to like do a seesaw kind of thing, it's going to seesaw your legs up. By putting rocks on one end of the seesaw, and imagine a seesaw, just look at a seesaw, and the seesaw is balanced, nobody's sitting on the seesaw. So if you really want to lift it up from the ground, assuming there's perfect balance, it's going to be like horizontal, right? But if someone sticks places a rock or puts a rock onto one end, then boom, it goes down. That's it, So that kind of thing. So if you can just lift off a little bit of your hand, overhead somehow, two hands overhead, hands, elbows, even the head, your legs come up. Provided you don't lose your balance. And most people lose their balance because their hips are very tight and they're not able to arch your back. So if you can arch your back, this is going to happen. You're going to be able to float quite well. And once you can bring up your legs, that's the beginning. When you say, okay, I have a floating position. Now let's swim, right? So if you want to start swimming, you must first realize how tight you are. Floating on the water. If you're really stiff, very tensed up, and there's no not many degrees of freedom that you can rotate or wiggle your fingers, hands, whatever. Then you're going to need more time to unwind. But there's a way around it. If you want to make a start, you want to start moving when you're already floating, you do what all swimmers do. When you want to learn swimming, the first thing you do is you use force. You put in a lot of effort to pull, vigorously with a lot of strength. Just pull on the water, or you just scull, with vigorous movements, fast movements, and that somehow gives you the possibility to move. But it takes a lot of effort. You actually waste a lot of energy, you use a lot of energy. So you don't want to do that because it's self-defeating. It's like if your body is relaxed and it's loose and it's feeling the water, it has a good feel of the water, you use a lot less energy. You're more natural, like all those guys who are, all those animals that are swimming, those that are natural swimmers, like dolphins, manatee, I don't know, otters, fishes, all these animals, they don't have that kind of stiffness, they're just able to do it, with very minimum effort, just like birds, when they fly south for winter, they eat almost nothing, and then they're flying long distances, and this muscle here, the breast muscle, it somehow it keeps them going. So the same thing you want to achieve when you swim. You don't want to be like using all your energy and like fighting against yourself, internal tightness, and then you're fighting against that. It takes a lot of effort because not everybody is pulling in the same direction. some tendons, some ligaments, pulling you in the opposite direction, and you have to overcome that with a lot of force. So it takes a lot of effort. You don't want to do that. Self-defeating. So you want to swim, you got to somehow relax to the level where it becomes easy. So when we find ourselves very tense up when we are floating. But we are floating, okay, so it's a good thing already, but it's still very tense. You got to use force at the beginning, you use force. And you got to use little movements, start with the hands, wrist movements, fingers maybe, but wrist mainly, wrist movements from the elbow, just do small little movements like sculling or whatever, and slowly your body adapts. Slowly, you just got to be patient, you just stick at it. You keep at it for maybe a year, maybe for 2 years. Practice this at the end of your swimming session, spend about 15 minutes doing that after you have had your regular swim, whatever style you like to swim. And in fact, the pro swimmers, they also do a lot of sculling, to get a better feel of the water, to get a grip of the water, and they say, it comes to the fingertips, those guys who practice qigong, they know what this means, and those guys who practice yoga, they know that when you have the gata vasta level, the prana fills your body right to the fingertips, it's the same thing. So you got to start from somewhere. You got to start from somewhere, small movements, keep at it, get the floating position first, develop more degrees of freedom, inside the whole body. The whole idea is that eventually your whole body has to be totally free, all the 100 over chakras, 114, 12, I don't know how many, but it's around there. If everything is firing, everything is loose, then you have amazing possibilities with your body. There's no blockage, it's very efficient. It makes yourself very efficient, and it just brings you back to nature, the primordial state. The primordial state, as when you were born, when you were a baby, you were swimming in water, underwater. In your mother's womb, it's full of water, and it started with water. So, and now you try to swim again. Okay, happy swimming. Cheers.